President Cyril Ramaphosa, who's going there to assess the damage from the recent floods. Now, it's time to fix South Africa's schools. That's according to the Center for Development and Enterprise. It says that the current system is failing pupils. The organization has compiled 5 reports in which it cites a lack of accountability, corruption and cadre deployment as some of the contributing factors to South Africa's poor education system. And Bernstein, the center's founding director, is joining us now live to give us a high level of these reports. Good afternoon, Ms. Bernstein. Welcome to today, and thank you very much for your time. I understand you launched this series, this new series of these 5 reports earlier today. Just give us a sense, what are these reports showing?
Well, thanks very much. South Africa's education system, our schooling system, is one of the worst performers in the world. That's not our view. It's the view of Oxford professor Lant Pritchard, one of the leading experts on education systems in developing countries, who looked at the data across the world, and for our level of income, per capita income, we are the worst performer, underperformer in the world. And if you look at all the facts, when South Africa writes international tests, we come last, or we're the bottom 3rd country. And we don't just do that, but we test learners who are a year older than everyone else in the world. So we are saying it's time to deal with this unbelievably terrible system. Not because everything in it is appalling, but we have to move up the international tables. We have to start focusing on the right issues, and we're calling for a new team at the top of education, a new minister, a new director general and top team, and in many of the provinces who are focused on reform and determined to incrementally move us up the performance tables for our education system.
Now, what would need to happen for the performance to improve?
A number of things, and these are not original. They've been part of the NDP, part of what the minister herself has commissioned, and part of other reports. Essentially, our teachers need a lot more support. They're struggling. They don't have the subject knowledge or the pedagogical skills to teach. 4 out of 5 of our teachers across the country. That's the estimate of Professor Nick Spohr. But we also have, according to the minister, the highest absenteeism rate among teachers in all the SADC countries. So that's one issue. The second issue is the minister herself appointed a team, the ministerial task team, to look into allegations of corruption. In 2016, their report came out. Their findings are shocking. She herself talks of the stranglehold that the trade union, SATU, has over the education system. The task team concluded that at least 6 and maybe more provinces in South Africa are under the control of SATU. This is cadre deployment at its most powerful. But there is also corruption and selling of positions going on. So we have a corrupt and inefficient education bureaucracy, and we have to deal with that because that is one of the major causes of the problems we have in performing as an effective schooling system. So we need to deal with those 2 issues at least. There are some other issues as well. And we're saying that the fact that the minister did not implement the recommendations of her own task team to this day on how to deal with corruption and state capture or cadre deployment is a shocking indictment of this government. And that's one of the main reasons we are calling for a new and energetic team at the top of our basic education system that are serious about reform and that have the strength and the commitment to take the hard decisions that are needed, because we have a system that is almost devoid of accountability. And one of the reasons for that, the minister has tried, but one of the reasons is the government keeps giving in to SATU on how to manage performance in our schools.
The power of the union. You said the minister is trying. You don't think she could be part of the problem?
No, I said the minister needs to be replaced. The minister had tried before in 2011 and over a number of years when she first became the minister in 2009. And she tried to introduce accountability systems and performance management, but after years of negotiation, they back off and we end up with no accountability. She introduced annual sort of assessments of how our learners were doing in grades 1 to 9, so that we could see what was happening in the system much long before matric. And then the unions didn't like this. The system wasn't perfect, but instead of fixing it, she backed off. So the government keeps backing off. And we're saying not only do we need a new team in Pretoria and in many of the provinces, but we need the president to back the Minister of Education in dealing with the politics of SATU and the unions.
Yeah, do you think there's enough political will?
Well, frankly, I don't have much hope for anything happening before next year's elections. I think if you look at how the choices that were made in the president's reshuffle recently, I was not impressed. And I don't think we're going to get the kind of changes we need in the education system. And that's why we're saying it's time to move this from a silent crisis with terrible consequences for the individual learners, their families and their communities and the country. We need to all, in civil society, in business, we need to all start shouting out about this situation. And we've got to up the pressure on the government, on the political parties in the election campaign, in the hopes that we can make this one of the top priorities facing South Africa for the next government.
Thank you very much, Anne Bernstein, for your time here. Just sharing a little bit high level, the launch, these reports, a series of 5 reports you've launched about the state of South Africa's basic education. It is in a crisis. A lot has to change. I mean, SATU, she says, is too powerful. That's the teacher trade union. And also the minister is trying, but is not succeeding. She must go. But she doesn't expect much to happen until next year's general elections. But meanwhile, you and I can make more noise, she says, around the state of our education. It is, after all, the future of all our children. This is Today on eNCA, DSTV, channel 403. Stay with us. More news shortly.